Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, January 9th, 2024, and winter has finally hit sunny southern Arizona. We were in the low 20s this morning for our low, and it was chilly. You know, one of the most intellectually deadening statements that you ever hear is the idea of, that's the way it's always been. Everybody knows that. That's the way it's always been. Our history is full of beliefs that were later found to be in error and improved. For instance, the understanding that diseases were caused by tiny individual organisms that could be removed by sanitary practices took a long time to take hold. And now there's hand sanitizers everywhere. The disciples had that same kind of long-standing belief that everybody always knows that. And that belief was that material wealth, they believed, was directly equated to the blessing of God, and that the wealthy enjoyment of God's blessings would ensure their heavenly entrance. Then Jesus had this conversation with the rich young ruler. And in Mark chapter 10, verses 23 to 27, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, second edition, he says, Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, "How hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of God." This amazed them. But Jesus said again, "Dear children, it is very hard to enter the kingdom of God. In fact, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." The disciples were astounded. "Then who in the world can be saved?" they asked. Jesus looked at them intently and said, "Humanly speaking, it is impossible, but not with God. Everything is possible with God." He uses a strange illustration about a camel and the eye of a needle. Now, camels are great, big, huge, loud, smelly beasts. And needles are little bitty tiny things that as you get older, your fingers have a hard time holding on to. And the eye of a needle is a little bitty hole. And he says, you got a great big huge camel going through a little bitty eye of a needle. And that's what it's like for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. And the disciples are astounded by that. They're amazed by that. That turned upside down their long-held belief that that's the way things are. And yet here was Jesus flatly declaring it. So they cried out, "Then who can be saved? If it's not the wealthy, who can be saved?" And Jesus said, "Well, for man, it's impossible. Not going to happen. But it's possible only with God." And that's the key to salvation and the key to that whole conversation with the rich young ruler who wanted to impress Jesus with how spiritual and pious and wonderful and moral he had been. He'd never done anything wrong. He'd kept all the commandments all his whole life. And so Jesus gave him a task that he could not fulfill. Give everything he got to the poor. And he went away sorrowful. Because you can't do salvation on your own. Only God can do salvation in you. It's impossible of man, but it's possible with God. Everything is possible with God. I need to be saved. You need to be saved. Our sin separates us from God. And we can't undo our sin enough to take care of the problem. Only God can take care of the problem. Only God can do the impossible and get us into heaven. May God do the impossible in your life this week. May you see God take the impossible and make it possible. God bless you.